Everyone at the grand mansion froze when the little girl started humming softly in the corner, her tiny fingers twirling through the air like invisible ribbons. No one looked at her. The guests whispered, the maids turned away, and even her father, the powerful CEO, kept his gaze locked on his phone. But then, the new maid, barely a week old in the house, set down her tray, walked straight to the little girl, and whispered, "Would you like to dance with me?" That moment changed everything: her job, her life, and the heart of the coldest man she had ever met. Mira tightened her grip on her small, faded handbag as the enormous iron gates of the Roswell estate swung open. A soft drizzle glistened on the marble driveway, reflecting the towering mansion that rose before her like a cold palace. She had dreamed of working in a house like this only in fairy tales, but not like this. Not out of desperation. Her mother's hospital bills had reached a point where hope itself felt like a luxury, and this job, no matter how intimidating, was her only lifeline. The moment Mira stepped inside, the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume hit her. Every corner of the mansion gleamed, but there was a stillness that didn't feel peaceful, it felt heavy. The other maids whispered quietly as they moved, their heads lowered, their footsteps light as if afraid to disturb the silence that ruled these halls. Even laughter seemed forbidden here. "Keep your eyes down, your work neat, and never wander near the study," the head housekeeper instructed coldly. "Mr. Roswell doesn't tolerate mistakes." Mira nodded quickly, but her attention kept drifting to the long corridor near the window, where a small figure sat. A little girl, her knees pulled to her chest, her tiny fingers tracing invisible shapes on the glass fogged by the rain. She didn't look up when the maids passed. No one greeted her. No one even paused. When Mira asked quietly, "Who's the child?" another maid whispered, "The boss's daughter, Lila. Don't bother. She won't talk to you. She's different." Different. The words stung in Mira's ears, weighted with judgment. As the days passed, Mira realized what they meant. Lila never spoke, never smiled, and never seemed to notice the world around her. She spent hours humming to herself, a soft tune that echoed faintly through the grand rooms. Whenever anyone approached, she retreated, like a butterfly afraid of touch. Mira couldn't ignore her. There was something about that child's quiet world that mirrored her own loneliness. After her father died when she was 10, Mira had learned how silence could become a cage, and how kindness, even in small doses, could unlock it. One evening, while cleaning the piano room, Mira heard it again. The humming. She turned to find Lila standing there, swaying gently, eyes half closed, her hands moving like she was tracing music in the air. The faint light from the chandelier made her look almost ethereal. Mira froze, heart pounding. No one was around. The rules screamed at her to keep working. But something deeper, something human, made her step forward. She set down her dusting cloth, bent slightly, and whispered softly, "That's a beautiful song." Lila's humming stopped. Her blue eyes flicked up, startled, confused. Mira smiled, her voice trembling with kindness. "Would you like to dance with me?" For the briefest moment, the mansion held its breath. The hum of loneliness seemed to fade. And though Lila didn't move, her gaze lingered, a fragile connection sparking between two souls who had both been forgotten by the world. It was the smallest beginning. But it would change everything. At first, Lila didn't move. Her wide eyes blinked slowly at Mira's outstretched hand, her small body frozen like a delicate porcelain doll unsure of what to do. The soft rain tapping the window filled the silence between them. Mira's hand trembled slightly, but she didn't pull it back. "It's okay," she whispered gently. "Just follow my steps." The hum that had filled the room moments ago faded, leaving only the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock. Then, in a motion so fragile it could have been missed, Lila placed her tiny hand into Mira's. It was cold, trembling, but real. Mira smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes. "That's it. You're doing great." She took a slow step, swaying side to side. Lila's movements were stiff, uncoordinated, but as Mira began to hum the same tune Lila had been humming moments ago, something changed. Lila's eyes widened. Then, a faint spark lit in them, recognition. She began to move too, tiny hesitant steps at first, then slowly matching Mira's rhythm. Her humming returned, this time in sync with Mira's. And just like that, the mansion, once filled with nothing but silence and rules, came alive with the sound of laughter. The two spun gently under the chandelier, their reflections swirling across the polished floor. Lila's hair brushed against her face as she twirled, her giggle, light and pure, bubbling out like music itself. For a moment, time stood still. That laughter carried through the long halls, echoing into places it hadn't reached in years. One of the older maids peeked through the doorway, her eyes wide in disbelief. The next day, everyone in the mansion was whispering. She laughed? With the new maid? Mr. Roswell won't like that. And they were right. By afternoon, Mira was summoned to the CEO's office. She stood before the towering oak desk, her heart pounding as Alexander Roswell looked up from his files. He was tall, sharply dressed, his face carved with lines of exhaustion rather than age. "What exactly did you do to my daughter?" His tone was calm, but there was steel behind it. Mira swallowed hard. "Nothing, sir. We just danced." "Danced?" His brow furrowed, disbelief flashing across his cold eyes. "You're paid to clean, not to play games. My daughter needs professional care, not..." He hesitated. "Maid's wasting her time." Her throat tightened. "With all due respect, sir. Maybe what she needs isn't more therapy. Maybe she just needs someone to see her." He froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Mira lowered her gaze. "I won't disobey your rules again, sir." "See that you don't," he muttered, dismissing her. But when she left, Alexander couldn't focus on his work. Her words, "Maybe she just needs someone to see her," echoed in his mind. That night, he found himself standing outside Lila's room, listening. The soft tune of humming floated through the crack in the door. Lila was sitting on her bed, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. She was humming the same melody his late wife used to sing. His throat tightened painfully. For the first time in years, he stepped inside and sat near her. She didn't look up. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand gently on her small shoulder. "I miss her too," he whispered. Lila stopped humming. Then, without turning around, she murmured a sound, soft and broken, almost like "Mama." Tears blurred his vision. The next morning, when Mira entered the kitchen, the air was heavy. The head housekeeper scolded her sharply. "You've crossed a line. Mr. Roswell's daughter is delicate. If she gets too attached, it'll only hurt her." Mira wanted to argue, but before she could, a tiny voice interrupted. "Dance." Everyone turned. Lila stood at the doorway, holding Myra's scarf in her hand. Her voice was clear, trembling but strong. The butler gasped. The maids froze. Even the head housekeeper's mouth fell open. Mira dropped to her knees, her eyes filling with tears. "You spoke," she whispered. "You actually spoke." Lila smiled shyly, stepping closer. "Dance," she repeated, more confidently this time. Mira took her hand again, and together they twirled in the middle of the kitchen. The maids watched in stunned silence as laughter filled the air once more. Later that evening, Alexander stood by the doorway, unseen. For the first time in a long while, he smiled. He didn't know how or why, but something inside him cracked open. The cold walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. As he watched Mira spin his daughter gently around the room, her soft laughter echoing like sunlight breaking through clouds, one thought crossed his mind. Maybe the maid wasn't breaking the rules. Maybe she was rewriting them. The days that followed felt different. Sunlight poured brighter through the tall glass windows. The mansion, once cold and hollow, now carried the sound of laughter that refused to be silenced. Lila had changed, but so had everyone around her. Every morning, she would wander into the kitchen, tugging gently on Myra's apron. "Dance," she'd say, eyes sparkling with quiet excitement. Sometimes they'd dance to the rhythm of the boiling kettle or the hum of the vacuum cleaner. Other times, they simply swayed in silence, finding a rhythm only their hearts understood. And with every dance, something in Lila blossomed. She began to smile more, hum louder, and even look into people's eyes. The maids who once avoided her now greeted her warmly. The butler, stern and proud, started sneaking her candies after dinner. It was as though a veil had lifted from the house, revealing a warmth that had always been buried deep beneath its marble floors. Alexander Roswell watched it all quietly. He told himself he was just observing, ensuring Mira wasn't overstepping, but the truth was, he couldn't look away. Each time Lila smiled, he felt the weight on his chest lighten a little. Each time Myra's laughter echoed down the halls, it stirred something he hadn't felt in years: peace. One afternoon, he found himself standing by the living room door as Lila and Mira danced near the window. The golden sunlight painted them in a halo of warmth, their movements free and joyful. Alexander hesitated, his heart thudding strangely. Mira noticed him and stopped, bowing slightly. "I'm sorry," sir. We didn't mean to disturb you." But Lila ran to her father, tugging on his sleeve. "Dance, Daddy," she whispered. The word daddy caught him off guard. She hadn't called him that since his wife's funeral. His throat tightened. I don't know how to dance, sweetheart," he said softly. Mira smiled. "Everyone knows how to dance, sir. You just have to feel it." Lila giggled and grabbed his hand. And before he could protest, she was pulling him toward the center of the room. Mira joined them, guiding his hesitant steps. For a few seconds, the great Alexander Roswell, CEO of a multinational empire, looked almost human. They moved clumsily at first, Lila stepping on his shoes, Mira laughing softly as she helped. But soon, he stopped thinking. He just listened, to his daughter's laughter, to the soft music of her hum, to the heartbeat he'd almost forgotten he had. For the first time in years, Alexander Roswell danced. And in that fragile moment, surrounded by sunlight and laughter, the walls he had built around his heart came crashing down. The next few months were filled with change. Alexander began coming home earlier. He canceled meetings to spend time with Lila. They played, painted, and sometimes just sat in silence, together. He even joined therapy sessions, learning how to understand her world rather than trying to fix it. Mira became part of their rhythm. She was no longer just the maid, she was the bridge that reconnected a father and daughter who had once lived as strangers under the same roof. One evening, Alexander found her in the garden, watering the white roses that had just started to bloom. He walked up quietly and said, "You've done more for Lila than any doctor ever could." Mira smiled, brushing dirt from her hands. "All I did was listen, sir. She just needed someone who didn't turn away." He looked at her, his gaze soft. "You've changed this house. And me. I'll never be able to thank you enough." "Then promise me one thing," she said gently. "Never stop dancing with her." He nodded. "I won't." A few weeks later, the Roswell Company held its annual charity gala, a grand event filled with shimmering lights, laughter, and guests dressed in their finest. Alexander had planned something special that night. When the music slowed, he stepped onto the stage and announced, "Tonight, someone very special has prepared something for us." The crowd turned as Lila appeared on stage, wearing a soft white dress. Mira stood behind the curtain, her hands clasped tightly, whispering encouragement. The music began, soft, gentle, like a heartbeat, and Lila started to dance. Every step was full of grace and courage. Every movement told a story, of loss, of loneliness, and of finding love again. The same little girl who once hid from the world now moved with confidence, her eyes shining brighter than the chandeliers above. When the music ended, silence filled the hall, then thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes. But the most powerful moment came when Alexander walked to the stage. He knelt beside his daughter, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "You're perfect just the way you are." The audience watched in awe as he hugged her tightly, his love finally visible for all to see. Mira turned away, smiling through her tears. She knew her time there was ending. Her mother's recovery was complete, and her purpose in this house had been fulfilled. That night, as she packed her bag, Lila ran into her room, holding out her little hand. "Dance. One last time?" Mira smiled, her eyes wet. "Always." They danced under the golden light of dawn, no music, no audience, just two souls who had healed each other through kindness and love. As Mira walked away from the mansion for the last time, she turned back once, seeing Alexander and Lila through the window, dancing together, laughing freely. And for the first time, the mansion of silence had truly become a home. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from words or wealth, but from simple acts of love. Mira didn't just teach a child to dance. She taught a father to feel again. And in doing so, she reminded us all that love is the language even silence understands.